Hey, loves, it's Dr. Simone Ellis with Beyond the Chair, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys today about an episode that's probably near and dear to my heart due to all the things that have happened in my own personal life, and I hope that this will set a great tone for you as you're listening. So, today's topic is, what do you need to improve your life as a dentist? We want to talk about elevating your life from the inside out, because we're talking about things that happen beyond the chair. So just a little bit of background. If you are new to this podcast channel, I like to talk to you guys a little bit today about why this is so important. As a dentist who's been practicing now almost 15 years, that work-life balance that I'm always pressing and always talking about is so critical to success. But a lot of times we don't discuss this. And as healthcare providers and professionals, this is a very, very crucial part to longevity. I realized this probably too late in the game. Some of the things that I recognized about myself, I had to learn the hard way. And so my hopes are today during this discussion that you are able to take these nuggets, take these gems, eat on them, process them, and apply them to your life, right? As a doctor, I opened my dental office 1 year out of dental school. So I graduated in 2009, and by the biggest ambition that I could imagine, I literally go out and open a practice, Smile Design Studios, in 2010. I was 26 years of age. And why I like to emphasize that is that that was a very, very pivotal point in like development and becoming an adult. And I was immersed in running a practice. I had the practice for 14 years. And what that did to me as a human, I still look back and say, I don't know how I was able to accomplish all of that. Having that practice growing from a small 4-chair op to a 6-practice op with 3 hygienists and a team of 15 and 2 associate doctors, it was not for the faint at heart. And of course, on the way with that journey, I realized I lacked a lot of things when it came to self-care and balance. And it's interesting because what you do realize is that sometimes when you are working so hard on one aspect of your life, other things are falling by the wayside, right? And so I want to talk about those things as far as what changed for me. It was the year of 2017, I think, where my life started to go in a completely different direction. Unfortunately for me, I had the practice now, it was more established, and I had to spend a lot of my time, of course, developing a practice. And as you guys know, when you are in school, you do not learn how to run a business. So I spent a lot of my time taking business classes, a lot of my time developing my craft as far as a dentist, right? Because I'm new to practicing dentistry, and my personal life definitely suffered. I ate Chick-fil-A like it was nobody's business almost every single day, which was, of course, taxing because my body was processing all this heavy food. And mentally, I felt like I was very lethargic, right? I was married currently at the time, and the relationship suffered because I was spending a lot of time developing and building a practice, but not taking care of my personal relationship. And then on top of that, right, this year, what was happening is that my body was actually physically shutting down from the levels of stress, right? So I've shared this story if you follow me on Instagram. And 1 year, literally in 2 months' time, I went from having to get a divorce to walking out of the courtroom of the divorce and finding out that my uncle had passed away, and then on the way to bury my uncle, my father had a stroke and would die a week later. that was a lot to take in, because not only was I losing the family that I knew, which was my married family, so that family, but I was also losing my own personal family. And then on top of that, I started to have a stage 4 endometriosis, and my organs were fused together. And unfortunately, I was going to be out of the office for 2 months because I had my ureters, bowel, and female parts were all fused together. And so I lost any chance of me having a natural family with bearing children. So imagine having to go through all of this and still having to worry about patients, worry about employees. As you can imagine, it was a lot. So what I realized in that time is that all that energy and effort that I was putting into growing a business, which was important, I was missing a lot of the cues that were outside of the practice that were critical for my success. And so what I would like to talk to you today about is let's go into some details about how my trials and tribulations, I wouldn't want that for anybody. I would want you to be successful in that space, but how to be better about that balance. Because now in this chapter of my life, 7 years later, I'm married again. I am more balanced. I have 2 days of work a week where I work. I am working on building other businesses, but I also take a lot of time for myself. I picked up hobbies. I spent a lot of time with my family. And I don't know if that would have happened had I not had such a hard year that year. Okay. So my first question is that what passions or interests do you have outside of dentistry? I think that a lot of times, especially for professionals, you get really tunnel vision on the focus of the dream and making sure that happens. But what I realize is that conversations that people would have with me and said, well, Simone, what else do you do? And I'm like, oh, I love learning about business, which is great. But like, there's so much more to dentistry. There's so much more to you as a person, right? And so what I encourage you to do, and this is hard for me because I didn't even have hobbies, right? I didn't have passions. I would go to work. I would work really hard at that job. And then I would come home. And if I was not learning something about business, I was zoned out. I was going to sleep and doing it over again. And what I don't like about that is that becomes monotonous. And although you're growing a business, there's so much more to life that is important for you, right? And so I had to actually get on Pinterest and Google what hobbies were. I mean, I know that sounds so like basic, but I just didn't know. I had gotten so tunnel vision that I didn't even know to have fun, right? And so I started trying different things out, which I encourage you that if you see this list, just start trying different things out. I started with the piano and I wanted to learn how to play the piano. And then I realized like, whoa, I used to play the piano back in the day, but maybe this is not my jam now, right? Then I started barbecuing. So that was another passion of mine, and because I wanted to be a competitive barbecue, and I still very much so enjoy that. But trying that out. And now I picked up more active hobbies like tennis. I played tennis, and that's been fun. This is a girl who was a cheerleader, okay, who did not know how to catch or play a sport in any capacity other than cheering, yelling, and smiling. And here I am now as a almost 40-year-old adult picking up a sport. I find so much joy in it. I absolutely love my free time. And why I think that's important is now my conversations are different. I'm not necessarily as uptight. I have proper outlets to release stress. And I know, especially in my industry, when suicide is dentists are number one for like committing suicide in our industry, right? Which is kind of sad. I know exactly why. And we all know this if you're a dentist listening to this. The amount of stress that you're under with trying to figure out how to MacGyver or fix a mouth together, on top of dealing with patients' anxiety and stress, and then on top of having a team that you're trying to lead is overwhelming. So having those opportunities to have hobbies outside of the practice is important. The other thing that's important for me is that I put myself first before I put anybody else first. And it's kind of to that analogy when you're on a plane and the flight attendants tell you, put on your oxygen mask before you put on anybody else's oxygen mask. it's kind of saying like, hey, you can't help anybody else unless you've helped yourself, right? And I remember hearing that as a kid and being like, that's so selfish, right? Like, why would I not put on the oxygen mask for the kid next to me or making sure everybody else was okay? But the reality is that if you are not whole, if you are not healthy, you cannot help anybody else. And I had to start putting myself first before I could really be a great service to anyone else. So that's important to me. Those passions and those interests, they live within me. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm not saying that anybody else needs to adopt that. But my thing is that I pour into me before I can pour into anybody else. I am ready to take on the day. People are like, why do you have so much energy? This is not without intention. I don't wake up with this much joy in my heart, right? I wake up just like everybody else, over it, tired, wanting to sleep later, hitting the snooze button. But what I realize is that as I get myself moving, as I get myself going, especially if I can get to the gym, that very first 10 minutes of my workout is crap. Like, it is trash because I don't want to be there. But after that 10 minutes, my body is warmed up. I'm ready to go. And now it becomes like I'm into my day and my routine. So the passions and interests that you do outside of dentistry, I'm talking about those things because they set me up to be successful when I am seeing patients, right? So I ask you this, and it's related to health, mental, spiritual, emotional. What are you doing outside of just going to work every single day? And if you don't have some things, check out Pinterest, start writing those things down, start thinking about where else can you show up. The other things that I think is important with pursuing passions and interests is being around people who are well balanced as well, right? Or even if the people are slightly imbalanced, you can maybe help. Each of you guys can kind of be accountable, right? Help your accountability partners. And what I mean by that is that your tribe just can't be dentists. Your tribe just can't be your healthcare professionals. It just can't be, right? My group of friends, my group of family are people of all walks of life. And it's important for me to have that because it gives me balance. It gives me perspective, right? If I'm talking to dentists all day and we're complaining about how hard the practice is or how much we've got to do and blah, 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 right? My perspective in the world and life is very narrow, right? But when you start to have conversations with people of all walks of life, of all professions, of all industries, you become a different person. And I think that that also helps me, kind of have a perspective outside of the chair, right? Pursues passion and interest. Another thing that I think is important is traveling. And I say this because every time I go to a different country, I'm almost 40, and my goal was to get to 40 countries by the time I'm 40. And I will be at 39 in next week. And by the time I hit 40, a day after, I'll be at 40. So I'll accomplish that goal right in my 40th year. And why I say that is not to brag about how many places I've been, but to talk about the global perspective that I have, the ability to understand what other people are going through outside of my own space and have compassion, have the ability to be relatable, have the ability to appreciate what I have. And that also gives me perspective outside of the chair, right? So when I'm coming back from going to Kenya where people are, impoverished and having a really hard time of life, and then going to see some of the fancier stuff, in Greece, I am just a better perspective of who I am as a person, igniting me, keeping me upbeat. And I think that travel has really been a great thing that keeps me passionate about just life in general. So the next thing we're going to talk about is that exactly, like igniting your passion and your purpose. I'm reading Atomic Habits, and one of the things that they talk about is the greats in the world get very comfortable with boredom, right? Because they're doing the same thing over and over again. So Serena Williams, who, of course, now, I'm tennis, so now I like these greats. They're doing the same thing. They're practicing and doing the exact same thing over and over again. The problem is that they just don't get bored with it, right? They know that they have to do that to be repetitive, to get better. And when you're igniting your passion and your purpose, sometimes I think that we think that passion and purpose will always be there. And it's something like bathing. You need it daily. You have to continue to activate that over and over again. So it's going to be important that you put things in place to keep that passion going, right? So a couple of things that I would suggest to you is, one, when's the last time that you've taken a course or a class pertaining to your industry? Okay. And if you're a healthcare professional, of course, I'm saying like not only the boring stuff that you have to do like HIPAA or OSHA, right? I'm talking about the things that are exciting, right? The things that are new technology, new things that are coming onto the industry, because those get you excited. And you're also in an environment of learning, right? The other things that are exciting are thinking about becoming a part of clubs, study clubs, groups that are fun, right? So for me, it was I created my own community and my own dental group when I came out of dental school because I wanted to be around like-minded people. I wanted to be around people who were also very much so in pursuit of knowledge. And so if you don't have that community or you don't have that tribe, I would encourage you to think about, creating your own, thinking about creating the environment, because there must be other people that probably want to do something similar to that or have a similar desire but don't know where to find it. Facebook and Instagram have been amazing with putting everybody on a global scale in the same room, right? You, with the tip of your fingers, you can access anybody from the UK to the Philippines, and you have such a global perspective. There are communities and there are groups that have the same thought process as you, and even the ones that don't, you can still learn something from. So igniting passion and purpose, I think, is important of where you're keeping your surroundings. And then I think that it's also important to set goals and have those goals attached to your values. It's if you are a person that is like, I only want to be rich, right? And that is your main focus. You may do some things that don't align with your values and goals, and that's going to destroy your passion and your purpose. I asked my team this the other day. I said, why do you guys, rock with me? Like, why do you work with me? What makes you want to come and show up every day? Because I was curious, one, and then two, I'm always having to figure out ways to motivate my team to stay progressive and current, right? Just like I said, motivation is needed daily. And one of the things that they said to me that really stood out is that you connect well to people and you are very passionate about what you do. Now, what they don't know is that half the time I'm like, oh my God, do I have to do dentistry today? Like, I get just as annoyed with going to work just like everybody else. The difference is that I understand my purpose and my value. I understand that when someone walks through the door of my office, they are now entrusting their care to me. And I take that very seriously. So my passion comes into, I would want someone who is seeing my mother, my father, my siblings, my friends to love on them just as much as I would love on that other person, right? So I want my people to be taken care of. So I look at all my patients with that same attitude, and my team could feel that. But that passion and that purpose connects me to my moral values, right? I don't think that I'm special because I'm a dentist. I think that everybody in my office has a very, very specific role that is critical to success. And when you take one of those people out of the equation, it makes the whole team crumble. So I connect my passion and my purpose to my moral values and my goals. I hope that you start to think about that and think about, why are you doing what you're doing? Beyond the chair, what are you doing to actually work on developing your passion and your purpose if you don't have that? I sit with myself a lot. I write down my goals and my aspirations, but I make sure that they're connecting back to my purpose. And I hope that that helps. The next thing we want to talk about is work-life balance again. And it is important. It is so important that you have a balance of that, right? So when I work on my schedule, which we have a morning huddle, if you want to download, it'll be attached to this podcast. One of the things that I have in my morning huddle form is how do I plan out my week? And the first thing that I do when I'm planning out my week is I block off my personal time. because that's important first before anything else. So if I have a date with my husband, or if I have a meeting with my mom, or, I got to go see my niece at her dance recital, I'm putting these things in my schedule. Why? Because those are non-negotiables. I know that I'm going to have to go to work on Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 to 5. That's already in the calendar. But what's not negotiable is me compensating or trying to figure out or negotiating my personal time, because I need that. And my family needs that from me. When my father passed away, one of the things that I remember him saying so often to me was, baby girl, I just want to see you. I just want to hang out with you, right? And I was so busy because I didn't block the time. I was always overbooking myself. And I realized the importance of putting those things, that work life, the life part, is a part of my equation. So guys, download that. Look at how much time at the end of the week have you allocated to these different areas. If you got 80% at work and only 20% at life, at some point that's going to come back to bite you, right? You're going to look up and your kids are going to be grown, right? And I always like to tell people who do have children, like, you got 18 summers. Really, you only got 16 summers with these kids, right? Because by the time they're 16, they not really want to hang out with you anyways, right? So you had 16 summers to enjoy your children or enjoy your family. Pertaining to my mom's 72. So, like, if she gets into a fussy mood, I always tell her, I'm like, girl, what you going, like, I don't have that many more conversations with you that are going to be coherent. And what I mean by that is, like, she's going to be gone, and, hopefully for 30 more years I have her. But if I don't, coherent conversations that matter are important to me. So I put those people first. I make sure that I'm focusing on them. And then also, from a balancing perspective, this is something new that I'm really realizing. As a natural extrovert, I also too like quiet time. And there's nothing wrong with commanding that for myself. So I'm starting to block off that time where I'm a vegetable, right? I'm not doing anything. I can sit there and be quiet. I can hear myself think. I can hear myself plug back into whatever source I need to, whether it's reading, whether it's meditating. But having that balance in my calendar is so critical to success. And I can't emphasize enough that too many times I think people learn this too late, and they've lost something in the process. For me, it was my health. Thank God that I'm able to still have an opportunity to work out every day, still be healthy. But it took a long journey to get there, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through that. Unfortunately, I lost my father, what I wouldn't do to have more time with him. However, I still have my mom and my sister and brother and my niece and my nephew, and go on and go on, right? And I've lost friends that I wish I would have had more conversations with. I encourage you that if you are not on that work-life balance, you take Sunday, take just 30 minutes to look at your schedule for the week, and make sure you try to implement some of those things there. One of the things that my quote I like is, balance is the foundation upon which greatness is built. You must nurture yourself, create harmony, and witness the magic that unfolds in your dental career. Okay. So again, that balance part is a beautiful thing. We're always in the pursuit of it. It takes time, but if you consistently try to work at it, you'll be more balanced than not. So the next thing we want to talk about is fostering meaningful connections, right? I had this talk with some friends this week, and we were discussing the importance of micro conversations versus macro conversations. And what I mean by that is, micro conversations are conversations that are trivial, they're pointless, they're petty. And sometimes when we have a large group of people around us, we all have those friends that kind of maybe are energy drainers, people who are kind of having like non-productive conversations. And it's not saying that you have to talk about business all the time or have this global perspective all the time, but I would encourage you to start hanging around or being around people who are having more macro conversations, meaning not letting the small little things get to you, right? The small little details that could annoy people, right? So macro conversation could be something that's like, let's talk about how I don't know, AI is coming onto the scene, right? Artificial intelligence, and how it's impacting dating because, people are using it to respond to people via text as opposed to being authentically themselves, right? That's a macro conversation. A micro conversation would be discussing somebody's hair and how much you don't like that, or being petty or being kind of malice. At the end of the day, these conversations are not serving and they don't build meaningful connections. What I want to see people do more of is have conversations that help feed the soul, having conversations and connections with people who are, uplifting, about building, also making sure that you're having conversations with people and you have connections with people who speak highly about you in rooms that you're not in. That's important as well. I want to have those type of relationships from a professional and a personal situation. So I want to make sure that if I'm not present in a room, the friendships that I've created with people or the connections that I've created with people speak so highly of me that when I do walk into that room, I'm in another room full of people who love me. So think about those things. And behind every successful dental practice, there is a network of people, okay? They are helping to build your practice. When you think about all the connections that you have when you have a business, right, it's not just related to, your friends it's the patients. And if you have meaningful connections with them, they can't wait to tell their friends and their family about you, right? And so I go back to that value system again. I told you, I really do treat my patients like they're my family members. I come in there, I give them hugs, I love on them because I want them to feel that. And what I get when people Google me or refer other people to me is like, I want Dr. Ellis because she feels me, she gets me. I pay attention to a lot of things, and I've taken classes to understand body language. So I'll ask my patients, hey, are you feeling okay? Do you want to move forward with this procedure today, or do you need to reschedule? And not because I don't want to be productive, right? But what I recognize is that there's a human attached to the tooth. It's not as important to me to just do the work on the tooth, but it is important for me to build a meaningful connection to this patient because what that does is that promotes me in rooms that I'm not in, right? So it's important that you think about that. And then also with the team, I've now reading the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and he talks a lot about leadership, and he talks a lot about these individuals like your Martin Luther Kings and your Steve Jobs and your people, the Wright brothers, who were able to empower and motivate a group of people to the common good. They built connections in that way. That's stuff that you have to do outside of the chair, right? You've got to learn how to be a better leader, not just when you're practicing dentistry, but when you're not. Well, not when you're just at work, but when you're not. And when I ask people who are struggling with their team or when I go consult with other offices and they're having problems, a lot of times it comes down to what work have you done outside of the chair to build yourself as a leader. Just because you have a degree doesn't make you a leader. There are plenty of people out here in the world who do not have degrees that are fantastic leaders. There are plenty of people who do have degrees that are terrible leaders. I think the crux or the hook is to be an excellent person, to be an excellent leader, it takes work outside the chair, right? So I'm hoping that you guys are investing yourself in those time. And the last thing I want to leave you with is embracing a growth mindset, right? Not staying stagnant in the status quo. I cannot stand mediocrity, and not because I don't think that people. I think the reason why it bothers me is that we only get one shot here, right? I have yet to meet a person who died and came back and had a whole different perspective. Like they died, they were gone for 10 years, and they came back and they got a second shot at this life. I haven't been privy to meet this person. So that means to me, I can conclude that this is my dress rehearsal and my final show every single day. And so my mindset is always, I cannot be the same person I was yesterday. I've got to be better. I don't get it right all the time, but I do try my best to try to come up with that mindset of today's a reset and I get to try again. And so when you adopt a growth mindset, that means that you are going to incorporate things that will consistently push you to be better than you were yesterday, right? So I go back to the same simple things. What are you listening to when you're in the car, right? Why I say that is because if you're listening to the same stuff that's going to keep you stagnant, as opposed to possibly listening to something that can grow you, you'll be the same person that you were yesterday. Or if you learned a lesson yesterday and you didn't apply it. Let's say, for instance, you got into an argument with your girlfriend, right, or your boyfriend, and you learned something about that person, and then next week you get in that same argument again. Did you grow? Did you learn, right? I think that more than not, we have the opportunity to be better every single day, and sometimes we choose not to. The reality is that happiness is a choice. We have to wake up with the intention to be happy, right? And that takes a lot of things as far as having that mindset to be better. I keep that in my spirit. I hope that you guys can continue to learn that you possess power to transform your life. You really do. It's just tapping into it. And you've got to take some bold steps as you are moving in life if you want to see success, if you want to see greatness. Ordinary people, mediocre people, right? They're not doing the work. They may have life happening to them, and we all have. The difference is that one person will take those life situations and learn how to transform them, while the other one will become defined by them. And so I encourage you, start thinking about ways to grow your mindset. And if you're stuck in a stagnant place, because that's possible, start changing things up, changing your environment up to try to get you out of that space. Guys, I am so excited that you're listening to this podcast because my hopes are that it will continue to give you food, fuel for the soul, make you better. The reason why I created Beyond the Chair is that I realized that it's a lot to be a great clinician and dentist, but it takes so much more to be a great, amazing human. And so what you do outside of the chair is just as important as what you do in it. This is Dr. Ellis with Beyond the Chair. I hope that today this served you. And be sure to check us out, subscribe to our podcast, as well as like and subscribe on Instagram. And give me some feedback. Let me know how we're doing. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.